Hi, my name is Tony Sage. I'm a dev, and this is Sage Dev. We talked a little bit about TraceRiver, which was this NPM package that I was going to build with AI. I didn't want to walk through the agentic process. If you want to see all of that, you can look at how I built my portfolio with agentic. That's in another video. But here I figured we could talk about process. We can talk about how it worked, what it ended up with. I can demo TraceRiver, and then we can talk about what next steps would be in maintaining this in an active repo. I've got some issues I've already created. Maybe we'll work through one and just see how it works. For starters, this is my repo. This is under the MIT license. So when you're developing something new, you don't have to declare it in the copyright. You can just say no copyright, and it assumes that you have private ownership of the repo. It's not as ironclad as setting a copyright license in the repo, but it's close. For this, because I do want it to be open source, and even though I'm the only one maintaining it, if anybody finds an issue, if there's a bug or anything like that, we want to address it here. We've dropped it under the MIT license. It's much more straightforward for things like Node Package Manager stuff, where they're literally copying a version of this, a packaged NPM instance, to their repo for use. So it wouldn't make sense for this to not be MIT. We did that. We established our entirety of our builds. Like you can see, I've been working on this for quite some time. But we are in a good state. If you read through the repo and you want to see where our current state is and how it works, we have an auto document built into our process for using the agentic development that can show you each of the pieces of the roadmap that we worked and what was shipped. So what was the spec that the design came up with? What was the review that it came back with? All the AC and the automated testing and things are in there too. And we can look at that in the repo real quick. We should be fully complete. This last phase would be more of a bug fetching to completion thing. I did implement this in NPM and deployed it. So it's in beta right now. It's 0.2 is the version as of the time I'm making this video. And I thought that I had it set here. I don't. It's going to be in the package. And all that's done. So let's look at the repo real quick before we test it out. I have too many windows open, pardon me. So this is the TraceRiver repo locally. So I just pushed this not too long ago. Some of the things that we did for ease of maintenance, we created Claude MD across several directories. So there's a global Claude MD for how does this work, how's it packaged. There's one for the docs and how it auto docs and how the process works. And then it has nested ones throughout. It has one in source, I believe, yeah. So that it can give more context when context is needed. So that's all done. I also have our full test suite, which we can look at in a global sense. Everything that was implemented, even if it was just pieces of a phase, are all tracked in our tests. If you want to look through the actual documentation and how it worked, pipelines are where we say, okay, where are we at? What's our status in general? What worked in this part of the phase, how it worked, and what our open questions were, and why we made the decisions that we made. And it does that for each of the separate phases, and these are all linked through the repo. If you want to see the entire project, that would be in this project overview. And this is everything that we've done, including there's a data flow about how it works. So when it comes through, it lands on the river log, and then it tracks through fingerprints so it can group them and all of those things, along with all the decisions that we made, and all of that's in there too. It also goes into deep documentation on each phase. So if you want to see the implementation, that would be in the pipeline. If you want to see the documentation, that would be in project feature. It also has every issue that came up as a defect, all of the evidence, which includes images for those defects, and then what it passed back, and then how those testing plans were launched. So there's a lot of documentation in here. If you want to follow any of this or see why we implemented it the way we did, it's all auto-documented. This would be something that we would probably consolidate, and if we were going to sell it, create some kind of an ARC42 doc on how all the functionality ties together and present that. But it has each piece for each agent documenting, and then an overall doc, which would be in our projects directory. So all that's done with agentic AI development. Actually looking at the functionality in here, it's pretty straightforward. There's a SPA that lives on our index.html. That SPA is running through TypeScript, that source main TSX, and then the TypeScript has all of the different bits in here. It also uses, I think it was leveraging some React, but that might have been for the initial build. Yeah, all I see here, TypeScript. And then we have our concept art, and there's CI pipelines and all that. And all of that's in the repo. You should be able to review that at your leisure. Since we are in a beta release version, we've already deployed this out. So I'm going to exit out of that repo, and I'm dropping into my Street Bytes, which is my active directory for doing a Laravel. I have a Laravel I have a Redis and Nginx and all of those things built into Lando. So we went ahead and booted it. If you did want to install this, like I said, it's available. So I'm just going to do an npm install TraceRiver, and it's going to pull that package down. Yep, it did. Installed TraceRiver, added to my package.json. You can see, and I can run it. So it's an npx TraceRiver, and when we get into the final version, I'll probably shorten that, so it's not TraceRiver, so it's TR or something more easy to use. So this is our final state. Right now, when it opens, everything is set as not tracked, and you have to enable them. I'm going to have, if you look at my issues, one of the asks is to automatically enable all. So if we checked one box, it turns on all of the containers. But as it is right now, these are only related to the directory you're in. So if you are somebody like me that works on many different projects, when you run it, even if you have it installed globally, it should only show containers related to your current process. It also is tracking my Laravel local file. This is pre-built to work across multiple different languages and setups. I have to really test in every type of environment to make that bulletproof. And the reality is I'm probably not going to be able to do that. So if there are any situations where you're trying to use this and it's not giving you exactly what you need, you can just add it into the issues in GitHub, which is public repo, add an issue, and we will address it. The end goal is to make this something that is useful across the board to many, many different people. But now that I have that set up, I can enable all of these. Looks like I did have an error, and it's probably around my boot process or something. But when we run through these, and there's still some tweaking I need to do, I have another issue open to say, okay, this is debug. Why is it showing as a warn? Maybe that's the one we'll address in this video. But it does a lot of good things. One thing that it does is if I click in here, or if I actually filter out, I could say errors only, and it only highlights errors. If I do want to filter it out, I could do it like this as well. If I want to not show that particular Docker container, I can uncheck a box. and it goes away. All of that's functional. So I'll just demo. So I think this was the first one I checked. I still have an outstanding issue to, when I enable these, resort them to be in chronological order. But it does work. So it also identifies where it came from and how it's being flagged. If you have an error, a true system failure error will probably happen across multiple different containers and be on your local set log, which is my local Laravel. I'm going to replicate that here in a minute, but the way that it works, if I want to see just errors, I can go to errors only. If I want to see my errors, I could also go to errors, which groups and sets, okay, how long ago did this happen? There was one instance of this. It says that my issue was around the wiki start. Default error log. I don't think that's a real error. I think that's just a debugger, yeah. And that's where I need to make that update, so I will. If you do see an error, I also created a free prompt generator around the error, which takes the processes immediately before and immediately after this and says, okay, this is where the bug happened, along with the stack trace and then surrounding log context. 15 entries immediately before and after. So that should make it a lot easier for somebody that, you know, is doing their regular development and doesn't want to go into each and every container to isolate where a bug happened. But let's see what it looks like in real time. I'm going to go in and disable my SQL, which will force a your SQL has gone away issue. So now if I open this locally, I still have the old typo version. There we go. So theoretically, if you're not working in Laravel and you don't have this set up to perfectly tell you exactly where the error is, or if it was a cascading error or something else, this may not be exactly what you want. TraceRiver will also track those. So you can see when it did that. I got 4 errors on my Laravel local, giving me that SQL state has gone away, because of course it has. And I also got errors on my homepage call. So then if I went from the homepage to news, it'll flag some more errors. It says I have a 500 to get news and adds another one into my Laravel. The way that I set this, when you click one of these, it automatically associates the errors for that specific container. So if I click this, it says this is what's coming from App Server Nginx, saying that I had a 500. If it's coming from here, then it's only coming from my Laravel. And if I show errors only, then it gives me everything. If I go to errors, we can see we have multiple occurrences. So I hit the home page twice. When I hit the home page twice, it says I had 2 occurrences. This is good for if you have a looping error or something like that, and you're not sure where it's coming in. This would be, hey, this was hit 500 times. Pretty big tell that that's your ultimate issue that needs to be addressed. But again, if I wanted to solve that, I could go through my generative AI prompt and I could drop that in, and it should use that as a reference and be able to more easily solve. We also have some other bells and whistles here. If I don't want to look at my local Laravel, you can do the drag and drop method. I showed that a little bit. There's still some formatting that I need to do to make sure that we capture all the scope of those. But for, you know, half of the bugs that you're dealing with on your local, you're not dealing with something that's in production, you're just dealing with some error and you want to find context and you don't want to dig into every container. That's where this falls into play. We also have, so I went through the error, I went through the generate AI prompt. I have numbers of occurrences with a nice little metric here saying when did it happen. It has first and last. So if I have this open for a longer development session and it happened earlier, it would tell me that it happened earlier and that we'd already fixed it. If we want to clear our stream, or if we want to retail, this error only flag would have to be disabled to show everything. But we can freeze the stream, we can clear logs, we can look at the latest error, which should give me just the last error that came up. And it looks like that was this one, the get news. Yeah. So that's my tool that we've built, that I've built. That being said, there's other features. If I have other containers that are outside of my regular life cycle, so this Lando proxy, Hyperion 5000 Gandalf, that's a Lando container that's only dealing with Lando systems. It's not going to be something that's really an issue. So it's not included in the standard container, but it is there. If we think there's something happening with Lando, we can turn it on and we can trace that as well. And it looks like, because I haven't checked it, it's not tailing right now. So that's TraceRiver. I think we're at a pretty solid state. Like if I do a filter by 500s, it'll give me those 500s. And this get index 500 is coming from app server, and then the nginx is throwing the error. So those are two different containers, but you get the gist. This is what we built, and it's in a pretty good state. I'd like to think it ate up a lot of tokens. If I go to my Claude and look at this month, is probably not a fair analysis. There's 7 days. Yeah, that's better. So in the last 7 days, I used 5 million tokens. So it's a lot. You can see my favorite model in the last 7 days was Sonnet, because the sub agents that I have built are built to render, to do the work in Sonnet. So even though I had Fable as my orchestrator, it is leveraging Sonnet for all the rest of the logic, and it took up the maximum amount of the work. So I really didn't run out of tokens as much in this process. Where I was dealing with issues was when I tried to do something separate in Fable or something of that nature, then I could see an issue with tokens. But most of the time, this just ran, and it worked pretty good. So there's a lot there. And if I look at my history, like I've got phase 2, 4, 3, 5, and a lot of context related to that. So that's all working. Let's address an issue. So with the street bytes, I was dealing with a brand new Laravel development process. With this one, we're going to address bug fixes. So if anyone finds something that they want to update, or that there's an issue that we need to address, if you go to my GitHub, which is tmkab121 TraceRiver issues, and you introduce a new issue, we'll probably address it in a future video. For the one that we're talking about now, we're going to get into mislabeling some logs. So let's have Claude take a look. So this is the wrong directory. TraceRiver, I'm in main. Let me do a checkout. Calling it bug smash 1. Let's say I'm addressing an issue. So with Claude, I have this already hooked up to my repo. So I should be able to just capture this issue link and see what it says. Can you help me problem solve and resolve this issue? For the record, when I'm working for my client, we're using GitHub Copilot, but we are leveraging similar process when we handle Jira. So we have a MCP connection out to Jira. We can get the ticket context from the Jira, and it can work it, and we can walk it through the process. And that's sort of how this process has changed in the last year or so. So I'm addressing this issue. That's my issue Can you help me problem solve and resolve this issue? Let's leave it in auto. See what it wants to do. I'm leveraging Fable because I got free credits. They gave me like $100 in free credits for Fable, and I'm going to go burn through them, and then I'll be done with Fable. So we'll just let it run, see what it says. So if we set our Claude.md correctly and we've documented correctly, then this should be quicker because it can see what the context is and then address it in a pre-knowledge based set. To be clear, I do not keep session history in my Claude. I think that it is a cost in tokens that it does not pay off. You're more prone to hallucination. Every time that I get into a new session, I want it to treat it like it's fresh. If I do need to go back and fix something that was addressed in a previous session, the easiest way to handle that is to go back into that session. There's even a search that I could look for that session. Model overloaded. I have never seen that before. Is somebody using it too much? Yeah, I've not used it at all. Someone's blasting through Fable. Okay, let's see if Opus is better. If you have to go through this process, there's buttons here you can leverage in the terminal. You can do it in the actual terminal if you don't like the desktop version. It's the same thing. I can rewind and I can resend. So if I've decided that that's more expensive than I want to pay after I already triggered Fable, I can just say, oh, never mind, and then I can try it again with Opus. You can see it has its own context if you're not disabled that session history so that it knows everything. I disabled it, so the first thing it's going to do is it looked at my Claude.md and dug it out. It also has, because I have a thorough documentation and I have tests, so let's just look at the CI pipeline that I already ran. So when it runs through, I've set this up so that they're not working sequentially. They're running in parallel. But once it sets up and builds its node setup, then it runs through npm CI pipes, and it goes through npm type check, and then the real bug fixing will start. So that is setting up, and then the web is running. There we go. This is what I was looking for. So when we do an npm run test, it'll do it on every build. It does a v-test, which is vt, and it runs through all of my test JavaScript files. And it passed everything, which is great. Things like, and this is all in the actual tests here. Wherever I put it, there we are. So it breaks all of these up. So things like for this one, if there's no file target, then it will allow it to be empty. So there's no next.js, then the output is standard output, run under Docker. If there's no project, then we're going to give exact guidance based on. So there's a lot of, you can see it's addressing different languages here. So this is a next build, and then a Go build, and then a Django build. If we want to extend this, we'll probably need to include more languages. But there's a lot of things like that that are happening in here. Like I have target newer activities, a worker log, watch who's containing the directory already exists. And this is stuff that it discovered mid-process, right? If I don't know exactly what it's talking about in the automated testing, I've got docs for that. So I can find the defect that it's trying to address or the test plan. So this is looking at phase 3, which is my auto discovery. This is trying to say, hey, I've opened this Docker context. I'm in this project. Only return that context. and how it was testing all of that. And it says what it did, where the file is, what criteria it was doing. So even if it's not super clear in the test.js, it is documented. We can trace it back. But it ran through all of my tests and gave them all passes, and it's going to run at every run. Once the parser reports a real level, the warn floor is bypassed, and it fills as unknown, so all three mislabeling cases resolve. This is architecture. Okay. How far should this fix go on the decorative banner and separator lines? Labeling fix plus treat pure decoration lines as debug so they drop below the default view and stop as a warning noise. I could go either way. This is around when it's talking about certain lines that we're coming across are given like an unknown with this long, nasty, encrypted symbols stuff. That's one issue that we want to address. The other one is this warn should be info. All right, it's going to continue to work. We'll give it a sec and we'll come back. So let's look at what it's done for me. We can also look at this in a PR review, which is a more realistic approach, but I'm going to look at it here just so that we have that context directly while it's continuing to run. So what it's done is raw was its fallback, but raw is not properly filtering and adding those levels. So we are implementing a Bitnami state in between. So when we have a raw.typescript, something is coming back there, we're going to look at not the keyword level first line, but the actual level that's being declared in the raw. So that's where this is saying if it says debug, then it's first line. Okay. It's introducing Bitnami as a type of log that's coming back, so it's shifting raw down. It also made the level inferred by keyword scan. So instead of it coming in as undefined, it's going to search for the actual word and set that. If we have a situation where that is not matching, we're out of alignment, then it would adjust it here. And this is in my schema, so this is in my docs. So we should see that also in the actual code. We have our ADR. So because we have proper documentation on this, anytime we make a decision around functionality, we're adding it to the ADR. And then ADR is good best practice for any project that you're working. In this case, it's automatically adding it because it knows that we already have that pre-existing documentation. So the ADR is saying that Bitnami images have their entry point setup logs to standard and a fixed shape where the app states its own level. When that happens, then it's going to set it to that level, otherwise it's in raw. And that's just what it's saying. We're also blocking decorative lines so that it doesn't come back with a bunch of dashes and equal signs, and which is not really relevant to what we're looking to capture. So it created our fixture. So when we're calling it as Bitnami, we want it to have, these are the examples, and we're running a test against it to see that it's actually working properly. That's the log that it's testing. Then we're editing our tests to look for pure decorative lines. This is the boring part of this process that I have not really highlighted. Anytime that you are going through AI development, especially against an existing functional product, so you're not vibe coding, we need to treat it all with proper care and diligence. This is showing what it's testing for. So a entry of lots of dashes or lots of characters is going to be removed. Anything with lots of equal signs or lots of hyphens or lots of pound signs, octothorpes if you will be removed. It treats readable as decoration. We have our scoring, which is how it's grouping those types, right? So it's going to find the parser for that particular error, and it's going to set the threshold, and then it's going to lock it there. Golden tests. This is just adding some more parsers. This is in our test, so this is something that it'll test against. If Mongo log comes back, then it should match this error state for those specific logs that are in our tests already. This is saying when we are running through it, we want it to be run as a bitnami instead of a raw. And the bitnami log is introduced in our code. So if we go to, there should be a bitnami log, yeah. So this is what it's passing through to test that the bitnami process is actually working the way that we expect. And regardless of what's sending it, it should be capturing those properly. Then we added another test, and this is looking to truncate repeating timestamps. So in the actual log in TraceRiver, it might have a second timestamp that's included by whatever container. We don't really care about that. It's just making the logs messier and harder to read. We already have a timestamp that's in the current user's time, so we are removing it, and then it's stripping those out to info if it's in info. It ran the builds, and it's telling me exactly what it did. So it added a new bitnami log and a test to test against that log, and then it updated the log schema and decisions with my ADR, and then ran all of my suite. And I don't like to have it PR for me, so I'm going to do that. If we look at the logs, it's just said we're also doing a bitnami in our flow, added my ADR. There's the things that I've already reviewed. Claude is also adding bitnami in to this sticky source. It added a big comment in the pipelines and added the scoring parser to try to clean up those. This is net new. This is my format. So when it's digging into the code, this is the regular expression we're checking against. Every line that comes in that is not already set to a certain language is going to hit this before it goes to raw. And if it matches this regular expression with debug, info, warn, error, whatever, then it should set that level differently than it would in a raw. And that's where it's setting the score, and then it's parsing the string for render. We have gone from Mongo, CLF, JSON, and raw to now Mongo, CLF, JSON, bitnami, and raw. And it's added that as a parser file, which follows what we've already got. Box block only raw. So box drawing. Oh, this is removing the symbols. These are my symbols. And then it's doing it again for the, so the ASCIIs are removing anything that's all equals or hyphens or empty spaces or whatever. All of those are matching. And it's looking for something that's 3 or more. So that flows. We want white spaces also removed. And to clean up that decorative line, that's my keyword level was called here. but now it's introduced to an inline, which is fine. So there's a tertiary here saying, is it a decorative line? Then it's set to debug. And then if it's not, then it would do that keyword level. So that's what it's introduced here. And that level is set in there so that we could say this is a debug because it's decorative. We have the comments that AI will introduce are a little bit excessive, in my opinion. So it has, this is in my tests. This is just checking that if I have some message, it has to truncate properly. It has to be set to info if it's an info term, all of that. So I think this is related to my test. This is the actual test case for that, and then the TypeScript for the actual parser. So this is looking at my lines and checking to see, it says it should be UTF-8 potentially. This is looking at my test log and setting this. So this is my test parser. And when it runs this, you can see it's using my Bitnami log as the testing document. So if I was going to do this later and I wanted to add additional test cases, I saw something that didn't come back the way that we wanted to, and I didn't want AI to do it, I would do the actual work in the Bitnami log to test the Bitnami functionality, if that follows. So that's new. Chunk fuzz is around saying, hey, I want to get all of my errors that are warnings, for example, and it chunks those. This is just adding Bitnami log as another potential chunk point. And when we run, we want it to run those new errors. Bitnami log under Docker, warn floor, honors each line self-declared level instead of flooring info debug up to warn. Okay. So it's giving me all of the issues are running through pipeline, and then this is my new raw to catch things that I don't like the long decorative strings and things like that. Okay, so that's gone through a thorough review with this level of complexity and the fact I don't want to embarrass myself. It is worth going to that level of detail for every single change. Doing it for the initial agentic process is a little bit insane because you're talking about 1,200 lines or 120,000 lines of code or something. Let me look at my initial. So if I look at my first PR, initial build was over 3,000 files, over 1,766,000 lines. So with that level, it's not realistic for someone to test each thing in depth. It's almost, you have to do some kind of a regression test because it's just not something that you can capture in the scope. But now that we have a stable version that is being tested and all the tests are coming back complete, now from now forever onward, we are going to go that level because that's what professionals do. Okay, I think that we're good. I'm going to go ahead and commit this. We gave it our thorough review. We could look at it again in the pipeline, I suppose. Address issue number. All right, so we pushed our new branch. It will not run on a commit. However, let me dig out my note. I do want it to run when I deploy this. So if I wanted to test it, if you haven't done this before, in node package, this is my basic notes for this. If we wanted to test it locally, So I knew that I have this new package. It's running, everything in the CI pipeline is passing, but I want to actually see that it's working. I don't trust AI to do all my testing, which is valid. Then I could do a actual run, build, run pack, which creates a zip file. Then you could install that zip file locally, and then you could just go to your project and run it, and it should run. Because I'm not super concerned, this is not a massive problem, this is just addressing a known bug, I'm going to just go through the CI pipelines, and then we are going to attempt to build this. So bug smash 1, address number 8, bug smash, create PR. And it's going to run through my CI pipelines. If it was not just me, if I wanted someone else who was really passionate about this and I wanted to add them into the repo as a contributor, then I would set up some rules to say we cannot merge until all of these have completed successfully. But because it's just me, we are not going to introduce those in rules. We are just going to use the honor system, and if it fails, we're going to address it before we merge. But you should never deploy to main, and God knows, never force push. You're just asking for everything to blow up on you. But the nice thing about using NPM, and this being for devs, I don't have to worry that much about actually, if I introduce something and it doesn't work right, our clients for this, prospective clients, are going to be developers. And they understand. I don't want to break anything. I don't want to be embarrassed. So I am going to let that finish running first. But while that's running, we can do our work to deploy this version change. So for my version change, I can do an npm login npm version minor, which would increase my version. Let's go ahead and do that. Oh, and the 2FA is now absolutely mandatory in NPM. So expect that. So I am logged in. I can do an npm who am I don't think that's necessary. I can do npm version minor, and you can be more granular. I could do this as, this is a bug fix. It could be 3.0 or 0.2.1. I don't particularly care. So it's updating that npm version for me, and then I can do a dry run. This would be if I wanted to run my CI pipelines locally. I could run a dry run, which is basically going to run the same tests that it would for publish, and if it fails, it's not going to do anything because it's a dry run. But because I already have my CI pipelines, and these CI pipelines broke, what did you do? Come on, AI. I thought you were better than this. Oh, so my local node version is more mature than this node version that's available on GitHub. Because of this, we have a test that it built around responsiveness and tried to set a ceiling of 350. I'm fine with it going to 400. I mean, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. So I'm going to pass this to Claude, and it's just going to say, okay, we're incrementing it. And that's because we're adding to complexity. So when you add to complexity, it's going to add to your latency. I don't think we're going to see this as really a critical issue by any stretch of the imagination. And because it's happening locally and not in reality, it's not going to happen in GitHub. It's going to happen on your local. It should be very zippy. We don't need to really worry about setting our maximum megabyte ceiling to 350. but it's going to show me where that is, and we're going to update it. Run locally hit 278. So locally, I'm totally fine, which is why it's flagging me on the pipeline. So we're going to let that run a sec. I'll be back. So failing tests, they updated our tests to make it even more complex and isolate what was going on. So it says the Bitnami parser that I just added only fires on equal arrow, adds one regex to 50 line detection windows, so it should not be that level of processing. My branch runs it fine. 393 is environment variance on the run. Rerun the memory test. Fine. I did make one uncommitted improvement to raw TS is decoration line, now fast rejects ordinary lines. Things that you should do when you're working in AI. When you get near a point where you're complete with this particular feature, like something larger, you should ask it, hey, is there anything that you're not sure about? And is there anything that I'm overlooking? Because when you do that, it brings it to light that it did make some kind of a crazy decision that didn't mean anything, or that there's some other way it could handle it better. And it'll auto-fix itself, especially if you're using different models. Let's recommit that. So it made one small change. So it's trying to cut that run by a small margin. Instead of doing just the one regex test, it's running multiples and it's adding a frontline space. And this is on the parser. So this is on the actual parser. So this is not test related. This is an actual change. So we'll go ahead and commit it. It's okay. Okay, we pushed out that new resolution. And because we haven't merged and we're not squashing, it's just going to rerun it right away. And hopefully it passes. While it does that, let's go ahead and we're not going to do the full release just in case. So we'll do a dry run. So I already incremented my minor version, which is fine. I'm going to do a dry run to publish. Each of these is related to one specific TypeScript file, and it iterates through each of them. So the upside of that is that I can actually go in and identify when it failed, what failed, and then have that as a starting point. Come on. Come on. You can do it. Believe in yourself. Okay, we'll pause it for a sec. Okay, so it did resolve. Thank goodness. So the change that it made fixed the processing megabits. We have no conflicts, we have no issues, and we're going to merge. It also, when I did my package change, it updated my version. So I probably should have done that before. It really doesn't matter all that much, but we've merged it. For now, it looks like everything worked. If I look at my NPM, it has incremented where it needs to increment, introduced my fonts, and then did my cache breaking for my assets. And in my tarbell, set all of my pieces and properly ran. So this was a dry run. I'm going to run it again and publish, and then it'll publish. So if you're following and you are wanting to play with it, that fix will be in version 0.3.0. Yeah. So that's how we're going to run through these in this particular channel. If someone gives me something really chewy to work on. It'll make it more interesting. So if you feel interested in leveraging this tool, it took a bit of doing to get it set up. I'd be happy for you to play with it. If you find something to introduce, we can address it in the videos. All right, thank you very much. Have a great day, and we will see you later on. Bye-bye.